Welcome, you're watching India Market Close, and what a day it has been. If anyone was wondering this morning what the impact would be of India's GDP numbers for Q3, well, the markets are definitely standing up and celebrating. Better than expected quarter three number above 8.4% has seen the Nifty up 350 points. Right now, close to its day's highest point. The Sensex also up about 2%, 1,100, nearly 1,200 points up on the Sensex. So fantastic day. Now, what happens when you have all-round sort of faith in the economy? Well, the banks shine. Look at what the Bank Nifty is doing today. In fact, we'll pull up all of the indices to give you a sense of what has performed the best in this market, but 2.5% on the Bank Nifty. Metals also looking fabulous. Remember, when you look into the details of that GDP data, the mining sector has contributed the most, also responsible for that push to the headline GDP number. Metals up 3.5%. SAIL completely shining, 8% up on Steel Authority of India, but all of them really in a fabulous way today. Let's pull up the heat map and just give you a picture of what's working in the markets today. And there you have it, Tata Steel right on top of that, JSW Steel, Hindalco. There was a positive CLSA note on Hindalco as well. But overall also I would say old economy, your infra plays are all doing very, very well today. Look at an L&T today. L&T about 4.5% up. Autos have also had a decent day. Remember, first of the month, so auto numbers are out. So M&M in fine fettle over here. Banks, obviously, an HDFC Bank, 1.5%. I don't know if you can quickly see key Nifty contributors, because that will give you an idea of what is moving in that sense. The markets today, and you have an ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank definitely on top of there, an RL and an L&T. Only one other stock I'll talk about is a Dr. Reddy's, which is at the bottom of your heat map as well, and maybe you can pull up that individual stock. There is a litigation that they're facing in the United States. The company has put out a statement saying that they will be facing and challenging all of these in court, that they've done nothing wrong. But that stock seeing a sharp slide in the last couple of minutes. It's all round, though, a good mood, isn't it, in the broader markets as well?
Well, yes, absolutely. Tamanna, that is the flavor of the market, whether news-based or otherwise. It's largely positive, but I'll pick out a few negative pockets as well towards the end of this one. Let me first pull out something like a Suven, CG Power, Paytm, all of those buzzing well in the green. All news-based announcements coming through on three of those. Yeah. There you go, 8%, 6%, 4+%. Dilip Bilkon, let's also pull up a Paytm actually, if we can, and a Welspun as well. That one also doing quite well in trade, 5% up on both of those. But some pain in the market. Let's pull up the likes of a Biocon, which is down around 1% or thereabouts. Some observations coming through. Within hospital stocks, there is a pocket where there is some bit of pain. There you go, Yatharth, Apollo. They are Yatharth down 7.5% today, but outside of that, Apollo also seeing a mild bit of red. If we can also pull up some metal counters, something like a Moil, it's doing reasonably well. Again, let's pull up something like Tata Steel, which is doing fairly well in trade today. Again, it's, I think, the top gainer on the Nifty 50. There you go, 6.5% almost. So some commodity stocks doing fairly well. Also, if we can pull up a Landmark Cars, that one is also doing very well in trade. It's signed MG for a new distribution network which it's setting up. So that one is buzzing as well. Several pockets which are buzzing, both positive. Negative, lesser pockets, but nonetheless, we have a few pockets there as well, Tamanna.
There's a block deal in Tata Steel, which is why you're also perhaps seeing some activity, about 35.6 lakh shares. Not too much of the equity, 0.03%. But, you know, I was noticing what we're seeing in the mid-cap and small-cap indices, and we'll just pull that up and just compare with what's happening in Nifty and Sensex. Remember the news flow over the last 48 hours or so, with SEBI directing AMFI, that's the Association of Mutual Funds India, to, I would say, signaling a go slow on the vast amount of retail investor funds and that funnel going into small and mid-cap stocks. by force, per chance, you will see a rejig towards large caps. Is that the beginning of what we're seeing? We're going to ask this question to Chakri Lokpriya, Managing Partner, Red Strawberry, who's with us on the show right now as well. Chakri, very good afternoon to you. Great to have you. And what a day. What a day. You have just new highs on the markets. We started March with a bang. We're ending the week, but we're starting March completely with a bang. Do you buy into that theory that perhaps what we're seeing is also an outcome of smart money looking to move direction?
Good afternoon. Yes, it's a nice day and a nice end to the week, I guess. In terms of how the market is distributed, is you have SEBI-directed large cap, mid cap, and small cap definitions of what should be a large cap and mid cap and small cap fund. So I guess now with in terms of a concentration risk, I don't think that risk actually is that much, given that every single fund out there has a stock and sector exposure limits. So you can't buy a stock more than 10%, etc. There are various limits which are already in place. So I think it's largely well under control. Second is what we can see is multi-cap funds. Now, these company funds could probably increase the proportion they invest towards large cap. But other than that, I think so that, and incrementally, they've also kind of underperformed the mid-cap indices, and for the right reasons. So some amount of flow, yes, to the large cap, I think we should see in the coming days.
Sure. Chakri, a couple of pockets which are doing fairly well in trade, one of them being the Bank Nifty. No surprises after the kind of GDP numbers that we saw. Your sense at this point, we're seeing a solid 2+% rally on the Bank Nifty.
Banks, both the public and private banks, actually public banks are probably better placed. The PSU banks, like the large cap, like the State Bank of India, or the mid caps like Union Bank, Bank of India, I think all of them are well placed. Now, in terms of ICICI and Axis, they're trading at about 2 times our book. But the growth is largely intact. Yes, you will see some kind of margin erosion going into the quarter, not just in the quarter, into the next couple of quarters. But as and when the interest rate cycle turns, that will be a huge leg up for both private and public banks, the government-owned banks. So I think, as a space, both banks as well as NBFCs are well positioned.
Yeah, maybe NBFCs better than banks at this time, Chakri, given the fact that they will benefit earlier from the rate cutting cycle, if at all?
Yeah, absolutely right about that. And many of the NBFCs, their valuations are all still very much in check. If you look at Shriram Finance, probably at about 1.6 to 1.8 times, depending on the year that you're talking. LT Finance, a number of companies out there whose valuations are very reasonable. And also, these are the companies like Financial Services has kind of underperformed because of the uncertainty towards commercial vehicle growth, etc. Now, all this come July, after the elections, all various companies will start their capex programs, and therefore the NBFCs will benefit.
Right. And Chakri, one on the macros. Now that growth is firmly above 8 at least, that's the initial sense we're getting, and hoping that it sustains above 8. Do you now start to get a feel that the RBI may start actually cutting rates fairly quickly, or rather quicker, maybe one meeting quicker?
I think to an extent RBI is held hostage to what the US Fed does. And so until we see some kind of clear direction, which now seems to be probably about June, is when the US will start beginning to cut rates, hopefully. I think we will also wait, RBI will also wait until then because they have to take into account the real rate differentials.
The other big story, of course, apart from banks, is metals. Complete run-up over there. Before we go to the stock of the day, which is CG Power, Chakri, I just want to get a sense from you on what are we seeing. We know now there is, a block deal perhaps in Tata Steel, but SAIL up 8-9% today. JSW Steel, the entire pack. Is this a China play? Is this, again, if you are betting on a booming economy and obviously more infra spends, more construction, then steel comes into play. How are you looking at it?
Steel companies are, as you know, very cyclical in nature. And given the fact that we are close to the peak of interest rate cycles around the globe, and as the interest rate cycle starts to come down, which is probably May, June time frame-ish, cyclically, these companies benefit the first, the metal companies globally. And I think, so that's why you're seeing companies like Tata Steel, Hindalco also participating. And yes, you're absolutely right. Infrastructure spend is taken center stage today in India, and that will contribute big time to the steel consumption volume growth, as well as steel and other metal volume growth in India as well.
Okay, so those are some of the quick buzzers in trade. Let me quickly take it across to another one, which is absolutely buzzing. CG Power. Now, roughly 75,000 crore in market cap. It's signed a joint venture agreement to build, operate and outsource semiconductor facilities, say 7,600 crore to be invested. Mihika has all of the details on that one. Mihika.
Yes. So on Feb 29, the government approved 3 semiconductor units, and these units were approved under India's semiconductor scheme. The investment outlay was of a total of 1.26 lakh crores. Now, 2 of the units were given to unlisted companies of Tata Group, but 1 was given to CG Power, and now CG Power will enter a joint venture with Renaissance Electronics, which is a Japanese-based semiconductor solutions provider, along with Thailand-based OSAT provider Stars Microelectronics. Now, a little bit about the joint venture. They're going to set up an outsourced semiconductor assembly and test facility, and this facility will be set up in Gujarat and will have a capacity of 15 million units per day, and it will produce legacy as well as advanced packages, which will cater to industries like the consumer industry, industrials, automotive, and 5G and more. Now, the construction is expected to start within 100 days and will have a direct employment of 20,000 advanced tech jobs and 60,000 indirect jobs. About the contribution and the investment, now the JV plans to invest 7,600 crores over the course of 5 years, and this will be financed via a mix of subsidiaries, equity and bank borrowings. Now, CG Power will have 92.3% stake in the joint venture, whereas Renaissance and Stars Microelectronics will own 6.8% and 0.9% respectively.
Right, thanks so much for that context, Mihika. Now, before I go and delve in more detailed or have a rather more detailed discussion on CG Power itself, let me welcome on board Ruchit Jain. He's the CMT lead research analyst at 5paisa. Ruchit, again, before I go to CG Power, let me put this question to you. Markets doing extremely well this Friday. It's been a wobbly week, but we're doing very, very well. Of course, outside of the growth numbers that have come, which is a big positive overall, what's the sense with regard to charts now at this point?
Yeah, very good afternoon. I think markets have gone through a decent consolidation phase of about 1.5 months. Markets were in an uptrend till the month of till the mid of January, when we hit that 22,120, 130 high. After that, although we had formed a new record highs, but if you look at the momentum was not very strong. So primarily the broader markets were not doing well. And this entire last 1.5 months, the index has gone through some time-wise corrective phase, wherein any declines which were there in between, they managed to find support around the 40 days exponential moving average, and we again used to witness a bounce back. So today clearly seems to be a resumption of the broader degree of trend. I think that 40 EMA which I am talking about, that is now shifted to around 21,800, 21,850. So positionally now that would be seen as a very strong support. And even if you look at the data, then the rollover data, if you look at the derivatives data, then rollovers in Nifty were in line with the average. A bit lower rollover in Bank Nifty indicates that more room for fresh long formations are there. And that's what I think we are witnessing in today's trading session. So I think broadly 1.5 months of time-wise correction is done, and we have resumed the uptrend. Now, until we see any kind of reversals or important support breaking again, I hope the momentum continues in the March series on the higher side.
And Ruchit, with regard to the Nifty Bank, what are the key levels?
So Bank Nifty, I think, would play an important role in March series. Primarily an underperformer, I would say, in last few months. Because if we compare the all-time high of Bank Nifty, then last all-time high in Bank Nifty was made in the month of December. While Nifty has made a new high, Bank Nifty is still far away from that level. So I think somewhere a catch-up move would be seen in the Bank Nifty index. support has been formed around the 46,000 mark, and which is around its 89 EMA. And if this remains intact, then we could see a pullback move again towards 48,500.
Okay, so those are the levels. We'll have a larger discussion with regard to Ruchit's picks, as well as have a discussion with Chakri and Ruchit with regard to CG Power as well. But we'll slip into a very short break. We'll have all of that on the other side of this break.
Markets in a fabulous mood. 22,300 conquered with ease, coasting along, no stopping the markets today. The Nifty about 350 points up. Absolute, run up. Fabulous start to 1st of March and the series as well. We'll get you the F&O trade in a bit. But let's figure out what are the big news makers and volume buzzers in trade today. Anushi joining in with that list.
Right, Tamanna. So, right. We have Suvain Pharma as a top volume buzzers, about 32 times the volumes. It's 30-day average, while the stocks saw about an intraday high of about 13%. Now, this is on the back of the news that the company has announced its merger with Cohance, over which the company is expecting about a double-digit EPS accretive margins going forward to next year. Second one on the list is CG Power over here. Again, a 12% intraday high, about 6 times its 30-day volumes. This is after the government has approved 3 semiconductor units with an investment of about 1.26 lakh crore, over which CG Power will invest up to about 7,600 crore in a period of 5 years. Next, moving on to Jamna Auto, multiple large trades in this counter with an average traded price of about 129, 5 times of volumes in this counter as well. Next is Landmark Cars. Now, this was on the back of the news. The company has received a letter of intent from MG Motor India for opening a dealership agreement in Ujjain, Madhya Pradesh. This now marks their 6th dealership agreement over there. And if you have to look at, the company continues to remain in its focus in the premium segment. Even if you have to look at its revenues, the company's Mercedes and Jeep brands mark the top revenue makers for the brand. Now, lastly on the list is Max Healthcare. Now, the hospital stocks continues to beat in red for the 2nd straight day, with the stock being in negative territory. This is after the Supreme Court crackdown on the government, asking about the discrepancy that we are seeing in the charges by the different sectors, that's the private versus the government. So these are the top volume buzzers we should be looking out for the trade today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that roundup, Anushi. Now, before I go to some of the other volume buzzers, let me first take up CG Power, because I've been wanting to have this conversation since a while. Chakri, your views with regard to the semiconductor industry, a 7,600 crore investment. What's your sense?
It's a fabulous development for India. And, the semiconductor testing is a very large, long gestation market space. And so in terms of India the government offering subsidies is very important. And that kind of, improves the margin profile for companies like CG Power who are entering into this space, which allows them to compete globally, because the cost of capital differences between India and other countries is quite significant. In the West, the cost of capital is far lower. And so therefore, the government subsidies play an important role. And second, the marketplace is truly global. So whether it's the Indian various consumer appliances, which all use various bits of semiconductor, so both domestic revenue and export revenue potential is huge. The lead time is fairly large, but I think, it paves the space way for the from fab testing to go on to the next thing of maybe fab building. But I think it's a wonderful thing, and CG Power will do well as a stock.
Right, but Chakri, just want to try and play devil's advocate here. CG Power trading at, 80 plus times earnings. Is it a good time to be invested in a company like this, or is it time to take money off the table from a fundamental standpoint?
Good question. These kind of companies are clearly, one needs to look at it from a long-term perspective. Because fab constructions and all the semiconductor space is first the investment phase, and which translates into revenue much later, a few years down the road. So I think that's the way to look at these stocks, but these are rather than looking at the near-term valuation multiples of the stock.
Fair. Ruchit, your views, how does this one look on charts?
The broader chart sectors are positive for the stock, and we have seen a good support base getting formed around that 420 mark. Now, today, although we had a gap up opening, no, the volumes are quite strong post the gap up opening. So I think until the stock is trading about 420, I think position traders did not worry much about that. So if any existing long positions are there for positional traders or investors, I think they should continue to ride this trend.
Sure. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for those views. Another one which is buzzing on the back of major news is DRL. I have Varsha standing by, who's with all the details on that one, down 3.6%, Varsha, in this market.
Yeah, Harsh. So as you rightly said, so this stock is under pressure. Now this is on the back of a complaint which was filed in New Jersey's district court. So the complaint was filed by Walgreen Company, Kroger Specialty Pharmacy. Now it claims that company has improperly restrained a competition, maintained a share monopoly. Also, there's a challenge agreement delayed generic entry entirely until 2022, and complaint alleges that challenge paths improperly limited generic competition through 2026. Now, if you see, they seek damages for purported overpayments and equitable relief, and court has consolidated lawsuit with several other lawsuits making similar allegations against company. Now, if you see, a company believes that allegations were against its lack merit and will they will actually defend the litigation. So we do have all these things as of now.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Varsha. Now, I'm going to talk about DRL in just a moment, because you have TVS Motors numbers flashing at the bottom of your screen in terms of where the sales numbers stand. The stock is up 4% on the back of that. If we can have the graph on that one, you'll see that the spike is in the last 10 minutes or so is where we've seen that spike. EV sales up 16%, three-wheeler sales up 16% as well. That's where we're at, where TVS is concerned. But Chakri, back to you on DRL. Of course, this news may be a bit of a dampener, but what's the sense with regard to the overall business that DRL, I mean, fundamentally extremely strong. And therefore, at this point, what should your viewers look out for in terms of risks, given the kind of upside we've seen already?
I haven't really evaluated the current latest announcement, but, this is an industry which is fairly well litigation prone. And, pricing, because the generic prices keep dramatically falling depending upon patent expiry, etc. I think that is, and DRL has a very good legal team, very well entrenched and understand the space well. So I wouldn't, so that I would guess is a part of doing business in this space. Outside of that, I think the company's pipeline is very strong. It's well positioned. Yes, the stock has run up, but I think, in the US as well, right now you're seeing a slightly improvement in pricing over the next 1 year or so. That is pricing of the generic products, that is. So I think that way DRL is fairly well positioned. And this news, of course, I need to evaluate some more.
Absolutely. On the charts, anyway, there's a lot of pain that we can see. The stock 3.5% down, and sharpest bit of that fall in just the last 20 minutes or so. The rest of the market, they were doing very, very well. And those auto sales have actually, given that extra last rev that the market needs in a sense. So look at that bigger picture developing over there. You have an economy that is, booming right now, while the rest of the world is seen in pain. It's going to benefit construction, infrastructure, steel, cement. Of course, nothing moves without the financial pack moving, and auto as well. So all of that playing out today in positive sentiment in the market. We'll take a very short break, but on the other side, we get you the top BTST, actually buy today, sell Monday ideas, if at all, and what's happening in the F&O side of things.
right, welcome back. You're watching India Market Close here on NDTV Profit. Thanks for staying with us. Let me quickly take it across to the big wig of the Nifty 50. We have Larsen & Toubro. Government has awarded a major contract for supply of high-power radars to the Indian Air Force. Stock is up nearly 5%. Now, HPR, which is the high-powered radars, are a static sensor for long-range aerial surveillance with higher uptime. Also, they had won a major order for supply of indigenously developed close-in weapon system for the Indian Air Force. And it's also commissioned its first indigenously built hydrogen electrolyzer at Hazira. All of that really pushing the stock higher. I want to try and take in some inputs from Chakri. Chakri, Larsen, we know, has been investing in defense for quite a while now. It's not new that they are big in defense, but essentially the orders have started to trickle through now. 4% higher. Does that merit the kind of rise that we've seen today, or is it also a lot of bullishness around the stock that we're seeing today?
Larsen & Toubro is clearly well positioned to benefit from the new thrust that the government is doing in defense. The company has invested a lot and now is beginning to see orders. And the good news is, we're going to see orders not just from the domestic, but also export orders. And the company's valuation is still, of course, if you look at some of the parts of the company, is still very, very reasonable. And it is a company, from the infrastructure space, in one in almost every 4 orders comes the Larsen & Toubro way. So that way, if infrastructure of the country is growing and we are seeing the actual numbers show up in GDP as well. So I think L&T is well positioned both from defense as well as the infra spend.
Point taken. Before I go to Agam for the FNOQs, we're half an hour from close, less than half an hour from close now. Let me take it across to Ruchit as well. Ruchit, 4% higher, 4.5%+ higher on Larsen today. How is it looking on charts? Because we saw a sharp cool off in Larsen. If we can pull up the 3-month chart on Larsen & Toubro, we'll see that there was a bit of a cool off in the middle, and we've again seen Larsen start to gain traction. What's the sense now on charts?
So broader trend certainly remains very strong. We had seen some correction in the first half of February, but in this correction to the 100 DMA technically acted as a very good strong support. The stock consolidated over there. The momentum readings which are overbought, they cooled off, and it has resumed its broader uptrend now. So I think the stock should continue to head higher. First year towards the previous swing high of 37.30, 37.40, and once that is surpassed, I think 3,900 to 4,000 could be expected in short to medium term.
All right, going all the way up to 4,000. Thanks for that, Ruchit. Agam, standing by with regard to FNOQs. Agam, what is the FNO data showing us today? We're 1 day post the expiry, and we're doing very, very well.
Yeah, what a day it's turned out to be. And, well, it's about 1.5% gains for the Nifty, about 2% gains for the Bank Nifty, and surging ahead. And we have seen considerable strength in today's day of trade. In fact, 1.6% as we speak. So the Nifty has actually taken out the previous high. It's also taken out the resistance of around 22,200, the recent resistance. And along with that, we haven't seen as much addition in OI just yet. But, well, longs all the same. As far as for the Bank Nifty is concerned, let's move on and talk about that one. The March futures certainly looking at, so the futures itself are not looking at substantial increase or decrease. And mind you, the March futures are currently going at a discount as compared to the Bank Nifty, still, which is up as much as 2.5%. The question is, are we likely to see some profit taking, at least in the near term? That is something that we will keep an eye on. Now, in terms of how things have panned out, look at this unwinding as far as calls go in the Nifty. Even as you see it move sharply above the mark of 22,000, gaining well over 300 points, completely taking out all the call writers, all the writers who've written the 22,000 call. And of course, on the higher end, we're starting to see more and more put writing around the 21,100, 21,200 puts as well. In terms of your overall open interest, well, we are now suddenly starting to see a considerable spurt in puts as compared to calls. So, and once again, no prizes for guessing. Well, it will be around 20,000, 20,100 and thereabouts as far as puts go. On the higher end, we're now starting to see a shift well above the mark of 22,500, 22,600. In fact, now we're starting to see activity around 22,800 as well. So a lot of interesting levels to keep an eye on at the moment. In terms of stocks, watching out for SAIL, Torrent Pharma, ABFRL and TVS Motor Company looking at fresh longs, and short covering for SBI, Hindalco, IndusInd Bank and PFC. So a whole host of these counters advancing in trade with a favorable advance to decline ratio as well, and certainly turning out to be a tremendous Friday after what has been considered to be an extremely volatile week as far as expiries go. Well, here's to starting March on a bang.
Well, absolutely, it's a banger, and we're hoping that March continues this way. Thanks for that, Agam. And of course, Agam's going to join me as co-anchor shortly. But while we are at it, let me quickly also take it across to a couple of stocks, other stocks which are buzzing in trade. Let's pull up some of the hospital stocks which are doing fairly weakly in trade. In fact, we had Apollo Hospitals apart. There you go, 3% lower on Narayan Hridayalaya. We had the management as well talk to us earlier, and we'll pull out a slice of that conversation we had. Fortis Health is down 2% as well. So some of the hospital counters facing some pressure after that Supreme Court directive to the government. Medanta also seeing some pressure. Max Healthcare down 7%. Wow. So let me first take it to we spoke with Viren Shetty, who is the executive vice chairman at Narayan Health. And here's what he had to say. Here's what he had to, rather he told us about how this could impact margins, this Supreme Court directive to the government. Listen into that.
See, the truth also is that what is the nature of the thing that they want? Does the government really want a uniform price for every single procedure across every single hospital, no matter the quality, no matter the infrastructure? In which case, yes, there will be a tremendous impact. This will be impact on the scale of what this country went through in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where the price of everything was fixed. So what happened is the supply naturally came down. There has been an explosion in private healthcare because there's an unmet market need, and there is, in our country, an ability for people to get healthcare at the price that they can afford for most people, not for everyone. So if you disincentivize investing in quality, investing in high-end infrastructure, then you won't see any more of that anymore. So it will be a massive impact if you fix a common price for everything, no matter what.
Sure. Chakri, give me a viewpoint of yours on this one. Of course, are we really headed in a direction where hospitals will actually have something like an MRP on some of these procedures that they have? Is that a realistic possibility here in India?
To begin with, it's a very unreasonable ask because India has one of the lowest hospital beds in the world. Do not forget about in advanced countries. You look at a country like Taiwan, Korea. India compares very poorly in terms of, and that's simply because there aren't enough government hospital beds out there to take care of the patients and the population. So private healthcare clearly has a cost of capital which is far higher than what a government can do, and various things, right from infrastructure, quality, doctors, etc. And it is risk capital. So I think, it is a very unreasonable ask. So it's doubtful that it can be implemented in its current shape and form.
Sure. Chakri, point taken. Let me also ask Ruchit. Ruchit, with some of these hospital stocks, how are technicals looking now that we've seen a decent-ish correction? How would you trade these?
Yeah, momentum readings has given some negative flows in stocks such as Apollo Hospital, Narayan Hridayalaya. So this clearly indicates that there is a possibility of some relative underperformance in the stocks. I'm not sure whether we would see any significant price-wise correction further from current levels, because good amount of support is seen around 5,800, 5,700 range in Apollo hospitals. So I think we have already seen some price-wise correction from the highs in last 3 to 4 trading sessions. Now the stocks might go through some consolidation phase where they would trade within a broad range, but compared to the market momentum, I think they would show a relative underperformance. They won't see any catch-up move, what we are looking in the broader markets. So I think a relative underperformance could be seen, and one can avoid the sector if one is looking from a very short-term perspective.
Okay, point taken, Ruchit. Let me also quickly check. We also had spoken with the management of Welspun Enterprises. Stock is rallying on the back of 4,100 crore rupee order win. Now it's a water treatment plant, and Agam, this is a 4,000 crore market cap company.
Yeah.
And they've won an order of 4,000 odd crore.
Yes.
And that's quite massive, right? Yeah. And you spoke with the management. You caught up with the managing director, Sandeep Garg.
Yeah.
Let's first go listen into a slice of that before we have a larger chat on that one.
Sure.
It's a 4,100 crore plus order. This order is also very important from a strategy point of view, because we want to build the company into providing solutions for all the water related matters. So we are already in distribution, we are already in the sewage treatment plant, and now it is an addition into water treatment plant as well. So this is strategically covering another sphere for us, which is important. In terms of this particular order of 4,100 crore plus, this order is divided in 2 phases. One is a design and build, which is 4 years, and then a 15-year O&M period. Important point that I would also want to mention is that these prices are escalating prices based on indices. So the current order value of 4,100 crores when we actually end up executing would be much larger.
Okay, so in the end of the third quarter, you had indicated that you're likely to get orders worth about 6,000 crores in the final quarter of this financial year. It just so happens that the final quarter tends to be fairly largish, because a bulk of the awarding of these orders comes through in the last quarter seasonally, not for you necessarily, but for the sector in general. Now, from what I make is that at the end of the third quarter, your overall order book stood at around 8,500 crores. My first question then is that what is your current order book? And my second question is that does that mean that based on the kind of pipelines, and we have still a month to go, we could potentially see a higher than anticipated order flow for the fourth quarter?
So the current order book as it stands is about in the ranges of 12,500 crore plus. It is not accounting for the execution that has been done in the January and February. But yes, we would anticipate at least one more order before the quarter ends. So I would not say that I would want to change the guidance to any higher number, but I'll be happy if we are in the ranges of 6,000 crores and there around.
Right. Well, that's the management of Welspun Enterprises telling us about all that is in store in FY25. But we are getting the monthly numbers for Maruti Suzuki, and the total sales have risen 15% year on year for the month of February. And what's really standing out in this case, in this particular month, is the exports growth of as much as 68% year on year. The domestic sales, of course, have risen about 9%. So a bulk of the growth is being provided by exports. Now, remember that, and I am looking at the numbers right now, there has been some amount of weakness in the mini segment and the compact segment. On the other hand, what's really picked up considerably is the utility vehicle space, and well, vans have seen a little bit of growth as well, but it is essentially the Brezza, the Ertiga and the Grand Vitara which have provided the bulk of the growth on overall basis, and that's the reason why we're seeing that surge in volumes. I take that a lot of this will have to do with that 68% growth in exports, and we do know that Maruti Suzuki has laid out plans and in fact executed considerably over the past 6 months to a year, and that's probably the reason why you are getting the numbers that you are right now. Of course, Maruti is currently trending higher by around 1.5–2%. And okay, we also have the numbers from Volvo Eicher, where the total sales are looking at just about a 2% increase on a year-on-year basis. So not an amazing month as far as volumes go for Volvo Eicher. And remember, this is the commercial vehicles business, not the motorcycle business. We are still awaiting those numbers. And production has risen by around 8.7%. So we'll be keeping an eye on a whole host of these auto companies coming in. But, among the auto pack, I'm just going to take up Maruti Suzuki once again and see how things are panning out. And maybe we can take this up with Ruchit, because what we are seeing is that sharp surge of as much as 3% at the moment as we speak. And it is moving towards the recent high it's made. And I need to still ascertain if it's a life high or no, but it's still moving up significantly high. Ruchit, if you're with us, okay, I believe we have a technical problem here. Well, in that case, let me take this up with Chakri. Chakri, looking at reasonably good numbers as far as Maruti Suzuki is concerned, it's also inching towards a new life high. Hasn't made one yet, but it's it's nearly there. Your view on Maruti Suzuki, and what would you do with this one?
Maruti, I'd continue holding it. I'll buy it also for the longer term, simply because, the volume. If we've seen the volumes have come through, I think this cycle will further continue as we go into the next quarter, because hopefully by the time we hit July onwards, interest rates will start coming down. And that will play also a big role, because EMIs, etc., for higher purchase vehicles will come down as well. And I think the auto pack is in itself looking strong, both for its existing vehicle sales and, of course, the future growth going to come from EVs.
Sure. Chakri, couple of other numbers that have, or rather a couple of other companies that have posted good numbers. You have the likes of a TVS, very, very strong in terms of export. That one is also flying away in trade as we speak, 5% higher now on TVS Motor. In fact, the whole auto pack is a buzz, and Nifty Auto is up now 2.3% almost. So clearly doing very, very well. Outside of Sona and MRF, pretty much all constituents in the green and well in the green. Look at Bajaj Auto, 1.7% higher. Now, domestic two-wheeler sales grew roughly 42% for Bajaj Auto, around expected lines. Two-wheeler exports, though, up 8%, much better. So export seems to be the flavor this month, Chakri. Can this sustain is the question in an environment which, you had someone like a Bharat Forge come in and talk about how there is a little bit of apprehension for them, especially where exports are concerned. Do you think that this is sustainable, the export numbers that are coming through?
Two things. One is, of course, the domestic is always a function of, it is a multiple of the GDP growth. So as the GDP accelerates, the volumes of the domestic vehicles will accelerate faster, much higher than the GDP growth rate numbers. Second, globally, we are actually at a cyclical peak of interest rates, which means at a cyclical bottom of each respective economies. You take any of the countries that TVS and Bajaj and they all export into, all these countries have not done well economically. So, as interest rates are cut globally, their economies also will see a revival. And one of the first beneficiaries worldwide is autos as interest rates move down. So I think that way, auto companies, both domestic, export is looking good.
Right. Chakri, we've been talking about GDP growth. We've been talking about consumer discretionary showing a lot of strength off late. Of course, the auto sector has also been one of them which has been seeing advances. But staples has not really, moved up. At a time when you do see GDP estimates beat or rather GDP numbers beat expectations, the demand specifically from rural areas continues to languish. Under that backdrop, two of the largest FMCG companies like HUL and ITC haven't really done well of late. And in fact, we are also seeing a little bit of a decline in terms of returns with respect to the Nifty. Is this a time where you could find some value in these FMCG stocks, or do you think that you want to wait before you start seeing improvement in terms of volumes going forward?
I think I'll wait before we take any fresh positions in FMCG for the simple reason that, one, as you rightly mentioned, the volumes are weak. And second, if you look at, of course, ITC is far more simpler. Cigarette volumes have kind of tapered off. So the expectation is there'll be a pickup at some point. At some of parts business, its FMCG business is doing okay, but it kind of is all reflected in the price. And the overall earnings slowdown that ITC is seeing is because of its cigarette business. Second, HUL, no major product innovation, rural is still hurting, and therefore the multiples are right up there. And, the consumption pattern in this country are changing. People you see in autos. So incrementally, whenever there is an ability by the consumer to buy on these newer things like mobile phones, automobiles, or a new gadget, electronic gadget, so the consumption basket itself is changing, and we need to be aware of that. So I wouldn't buy into FMCG yet.
Right. Chakri not willing to buy into FMCG yet. Ruchit, what are the interesting counters within the FMCG space that you're liking on charts?
So I think relative underperformance has been seen in FMCG space over the last few months. I think still a bit of time-wise corrective phase would be there. But just if one wants to trade for a pullback move, then HUL can be one stock where one can trade from a very short-term perspective. But as I said, not for any significant up move, but just from a trading pullback move, because the stock has been in the oversold territory since last few days when the stock has shown some correction. And now the momentum readings are given positive crossovers on the daily chart. So pullback move towards 2480, 2500 could be seen in the near term. So if one wants to take any trade from the FMCG basket, then HUL provides a good risk-reward ratio over here.
Okay, well, we're just about 6 minutes from close, and it's turning out to be a fantastic session for a lot of bulls out there. So I'm going to take a moment to take, buy today, sell tomorrow ideas, and we can, in fact, go ahead and do something like that, because tomorrow is, I would say a partially working trading Saturday, because the markets are open for two distinct sessions tomorrow. So, Ruchit, any ideas for BTST?
Let me first give a disclaimer that shares that will be bought today cannot be sold tomorrow on Saturday's trading sessions, being the settlement being on the same day. So idea is from the banking space, but one can either buy in the future segment or hold it till Monday. I think that should be taken care of by a short-term by BTST traders. And ICICI Bank would be my call to go long on. So Nifty Bank Index has given a breakout from its consolidation phase today. So I think a lot of the private sector banks which have shown a recent underperformance in last few months, I think they can show some catch-up move. And ICICI Bank, if you compare the stock within the other names from the private sector space, then clearly outperformance has been seen today, where previous highs has been taken out, good price volume action, long formations, everything is there to assume that the stock would continue its up move. So one can go long on ICICI Bank with stop loss below 1060 and expect targets around 1130 to 1120 range.
Okay. All right. Want to also address what's happening with Tata Steel, because that's clearly the stock of the day. It really doesn't come through in terms of the key contributors to the Nifty, but it's up a whopping 7% as we speak. And it's not every day that we see Tata Steel advance so much unless there's some big news around the sector or the company itself. And JSW Steel is the other counter, the other steel counter, which is the second on that top gainers list for the Nifty. So both these stocks are a buzz. Ruchit, back to you on both these counters. Your view going ahead.
So broadly, we have seen that the metal space has been have shown a good outperformance today. And stocks such as Tata Steel has given a breakout from previous highs, indicating resumption of the uptrend. Even sales, the price volume action is quite strong. Post the recent corrective phase, the risk reward ratio is also favorable in for long positions over here. So I think for the coming week also, metals could continue to be in limelight, and we could see some decent outperformance, especially from the steel-related names. Even if you look in today's trading session, from the entire market, from the entire metal basket, those companies, which are steel business, they have been showing an outperformance. So I think this outperformance could continue, in the short term.
Chakri, your sense with regard to some of these metal counters, growth extremely strong. Does that mean metals will do well?
Metal companies cyclically have slowed down. The valuations also are very attractive as a result. EV, EBITDA, they're not trading more than 5 times the large cap ones. And if you look at Tata Steel or Hindalco, they're trading at about 5 times. If you look at the mid cap companies like Lloyd's, Metal and Energy, they're trading at only at about 4 times EV EBITDA. So in a cycle, as the cycle unfolds, as interest rates are cut and global growth starts reviving, etc., they start trading back at about the large cap at about 7, 8 times, the smaller cap at about 5 times. So there is still sufficient room for upside in these stocks.
Okay. Well, we are just about 2 minutes away from close. So I'm going to take a moment to thank both Chakri and Ruchit for joining us and taking us through their views on the markets. It's a working Saturday for at least most of us tomorrow. So that's something that we need to keep in mind as well. But, as far as the indices are concerned, what a whopping move for the Nifty. 340 odd points advance coming through and, well, clearly conquering the mark of 22,300 at the moment. That's likely where we are going to close, around there. The Sensex as well is advanced significantly, about 1,150 odd points moving up. I want to take a look at the Bank Nifty because that's where we are seeing substantial gains, right? 1,100 points up move there as well. And on the back of and good contribution coming in from names such as ICICI Bank as well as, HDFC Bank. Well, what do you know? So ICICI Bank is advanced by as much as 3% now, and HDFC Bank is once again above the mark of 1,400 rupees per share, and it is up around 1.7%. In fact, that is where the bulk of your up move is coming from. It's a key contributor there because a 2% up move for something like an HDFC Bank would mean substantially for the key indices. But let's take a look at the heat map now and see where a substantial amount of gains come through. We've been talking about Tata Steel and we've been talking about JSW Steel as the top 2 gainers on the Nifty, and L&T in fact is now starting to contribute too on the advances. We've started getting gains in Titan as well as something like a Maruti Suzuki as well. Of course, Maruti Suzuki reacting to the kind of volumes that we've seen for the month of February. This also does indicate some gains coming in. And, we have over 2% gains for at least the top 20 of the overall 50 stocks on the Nifty 50. On the other hand of the spectrum, significant weakness in Dr. Reddy's after the developments that we've seen with respect to the US and one of the courts ruling Dr. Reddy's as a defendant in a certain case. But besides that, we've seen a little bit of weakness in something like an Infosys and HCL Technologies, and Sun Pharma and Cipla potentially looking at just a little bit of profit taking even as we start seeing a lot of advances coming through there. So plenty of stocks out there to keep an eye on, of course, and we continue to keep an eye also on the metal sector, which has, of course, been moving from strength to strength. But what are you noticing in terms of the broader markets, Harsh?
Well, absolutely. Broader markets not as strong in terms of their rally today as the benchmarks themselves, Agam. There you go, 9/10%. Nothing to complain about though, because the broader markets have done very, very well over the last year or so. Let's, before I talk about some specific stocks within the broader markets, let's quickly also pull up the sectoral indices and see what patterns are playing out over there. You're seeing Nifty Metal doing very well, banking 2.5% higher, auto now settling in, or rather closing in 2.5% higher as well. So very strong close for auto. Among the losers are the defensives, IT and pharma. Media also 9/10% or so lower, but that's been the state of affairs in media, isn't it, Agam? Quickly taking it to a few stocks which are on my radar. Let's pull up something like a Suvain. It's done very well in trade today. Let's see where that one is settling or settled down at close. There you go, 12.5% higher on Suvain. CG Power, Paytm, Dilip Buildcon, we can quickly have those flashing, 4.5, Paytm 5, not bad. Dilip Buildcon as well, 5, nearly 5% higher. Welspun, and some of the losers as well, something like a Biocon, some hospital stocks. Let's quickly see where probably a Medanta is closing. Apollo Hospitals around 1/3% down. Medanta, which is Global Health, Vedanta up 1% as well, but there you go, 3.5% lower for Narayan. Global Health down 4.5%. Let's also pull up something like a Yatharth, because that was down nearly 10% when we started this show. Okay, so settling down roughly 6% lower. Among the gainers and losers within the mid cap, let's pull up something like a SAIL. Oil India Limited, it covers, of course, steel. Oil India, energy is done very well today as well. And something like a Tube Investments, that one also closed sharply higher in trade. Among the losers on the mid cap, you had Max Health doing badly, again hospitals, PB Fintech, which has done badly, and Z has also performed poorly in trade today. Data patterns, Metropolis, IFL, all three doing very well again in trade today within the small cap space, Agam. And then you had Medanta, Amber Enterprises, and Jyoti Labs, which were the three key losers on the Nifty small cap.
Right.
But with that, we're completely out of time on India market close. We'll let you go on that one. But stay tuned to NDTV Profit. We have an exclusive interaction with Ashwini Vaishnav very, very shortly. So stay tuned to NDTV Profit. But for now, from Agam, myself, everyone who puts the show together, as well as Tamanna, thanks so much for watching.